Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I am going to be doing another sprint review with everybody. And yeah, I'm just gonna jump right into it, and I'll go from there. So let me share my screen. All right. So, as you can see, I'm doing another Rick and Morty project. You would think it's my favorite API, but it's really not. I mean, it has a lot of characters, which is why I chose it. But I was going to use the Star Wars API. Their API has been down since last week. So I'm just going to stick to the Rick and Morty one since their API is working and it has all these characters on it that I can easily access and map through. Um, so yeah, let's get started. This is going to prepare you guys for your sprint. And for the sprint, you will have to map through a array of Smurfs and display them all. And then you will also have to add a new Smurf to that array. So I'm actually just going to take you guys through how to map through an array with Redux and how to display certain pieces of the characters to the screen. And I'm not going to walk you through how to post new character because I actually can't post a new character to the Rick and Morty API because it's not like I didn't make it. So they don't want you posting random stuff to their API. So I can't do that. So I'm just going to walk you guys through how to get all of the API data that you want. And I'm going to break everything down into an action folder and a reducer folder and just really going through the Redux flow. All right. So here I started out, you can see I have some steps and these are what we're going to be following to build our app. So first, we're going to be setting up an empty reducer and an initial state. So let's actually, you know what, before we do any of this, I'm going to add our dependencies because it's going to throw us some errors if we don't do that first. So we're doing Redux, so we're going to need Redux. And we're also going to need React Redux so we can have those bindings that we need. And then we're also going to have Axios because we need to make an Axios call to our API. And we're going to do some middleware. We're going to do a Redux logger. And we're also going to do a Redux thunk. That's some Redux middleware for you. All right. So now that we have all of our dependencies, this is going to be a little bit more complicated in VS Code than it will be in Code Sandbox. Like you can just press this button and add your dependencies. But in VS Code, you're going to have to npm install and then npm install every single dependency. So just keep that in mind. And I'm going to be posting the starter Code Sandbox in the link to this video. So if you want to code along and follow through, just make sure to open up the starter Code Sandbox. There's not much in here. I really just changed this H1. But yeah, if you want to follow along, you can do that. All right, so after that, we're going to start this flow. And just like I said, we're going to have a new folder for our actions. We're going to have a separate folder for our reducers, if I can spell it right. And we're going to have that's it. That's it. Yep, that's everything. So we have, no, I knew I was missing something. We're going to have components. Alrighty, so inside of each of these, I'm just going to go ahead and create an index.js for each of these folders. Because I am going to use these index.js kind of as a clear way to see what we are exporting from each folder. But you'll see when I get there. You'll know what I'm talking about. Okay, now that we have all of our folders and we have our our app is planned out, and actually I'm going to plan it even more. I'm going to actually add a component in here, and I'm going to name it character. Oh, okay. Don't camel case your components. Make sure that your components have a capital, because that's what signifies that it's a functional component. It's capital, starts with a capital letter. So don't make that mistake. I like to do that because we camel case everything, but just remember that. And then whatever your file is named, that's going to be the name of your component as well. Oh, my nose. Okay, I just had to take that. I had to itch my nose for a second. Okay. All right, I'm done itching my nose. So now let's go in here. Let's set up this empty reducer. So we're gonna add a new file, and we're gonna do character reducer.js. And then in our actions, we're just gonna go ahead and do that too. I'm gonna do character actions. I feel like when you go through your app and you start building it out like this, like you start you start building out the file structure, it really helps you to know, to plan your app, to know what you're going to do next, to know what steps you have to take and what order you have to go in, and just planning out like, okay, here's my components, here's my actions, here's my reducers. Just visualizing it, I feel like helps a lot in the early stages of planning your app and starting your app. All right, so let's go in here. Let's go into our reducer, and let's start to set up an empty reducer file. So I'm gonna make a comment. Step 1, set up empty reducer and initial state. I have an awful glare on my screen right now. That's a little better. Okay. So let's make our initial state. Ah! I cannot type today. Okay. And then we're just gonna do characters. And this is gonna be our array. And then we're gonna do fetching characters. And we're gonna set that to false because we don't want to fetch any of our characters right now. We don't want to get anything that's in that array right now. And then we're gonna make an error. Just in case something fails, we need that error. All right, so now that we have that, let's set up our empty reducer. And then in here, we're gonna say state equals initial state, and then we're gonna pass in our action. And then we're gonna have, and we're passing all of these in as props to our reducer. That way we can use them when we are making our cases. All right, and then we're gonna keep this empty. I'm not gonna make any of my cases yet or anything like that. So I'm gonna do export default, reducer. Okay, and that looks good. That looks like everything we need so far. So we officially completed step 1. We set up empty reducer and we set up our initial state. And if you don't know what your initial state, like what it's gonna look like yet, like if you haven't quite visualized that, think about it. Think about it, write it out, plan what you need in your initial state. Obviously here we're gonna need this array of characters because we're gonna have to map through that array of characters in order to display all of them to our screen. And then we're gonna need this fetching characters. because that's what's going to be the action that is going to fetch all of our characters. It's going to get that from the Axios call and get all that data from the API. And then our error is just blank, but we're going to need that just in case something fails. All right, so let's go back to app. Let's look at our next step. So set up store and provider. So let's go into our index.js. And I'm going to make a comment here. Step 2, set up store and provider. I'm having trouble seeing those little gray words. I like can't see if I'm messing up or not, but it looks right. If there's spelling errors in my comments, I'm really sorry. I apologize, but I just can't see them. They're so dark. Okay, so we're gonna have to import. I'm gonna move this import up here just to keep it cleaner, and I'm actually gonna make a comment here, and I'm gonna say imports for your store, provider, and your middleware that we imported in here, our logger and our thunk. All right, and then we're going to import all of them. We're going to say import our provider from React Redux. Yep. And we're going to import a couple things. We're going to import our create store so that we can create our store. And then we're going to import our apply middleware. That way we can apply our middleware. Everything's pretty straightforward here. And then we're going to import our compose, and then we're going to say they're all coming from the Redux library. All right. There we go. Now we have all those things imported. Now we can use them. So let's import thunk as well from Redux thunk. And these are our middlewares. And then import reducer from our reducer. Reducer. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a second. You can see I imported reducer from just reducers. You can see that. And that's because I created this index.js. Oh, which I didn't put anything in. So that's actually going to be messed up right now. Let me fix that real quick. So in order for this to work the way that I want it to, I need to import everything that's in my reducer into here. Character reducer, pop up, and then I need to not import, but export defaults reducer. So this way, when I have a index.js for my reducers and my actions, I don't have to drill down to where I want it to go. So I don't have to say in my index /producers/character reducers, or character reducer. I don't have to say that. I can just say /reducers, and it will know exactly what I'm doing because I imported it into this index.js. So even though it might not be super helpful right now that we're doing that, it can be very helpful when you have tons of stuff, like when you have multiple folders or multiple, like in our actions, you'll see it'll be more helpful because we're going to have multiple actions and multiple events, and it's just going to be a lot cleaner. And it also helps us with our actions because when we go in here, you'll be able to see exactly what kind of actions you created. It's hard to explain right now, but when I start doing it, you'll see. Just trust me. All right, so we're not done in here yet. We have to surround our app we have to create our middleware, and we also have to surround our app in our provider. So let's do this. We're gonna create store and middleware. Oh yeah, we have to create our store as well. That looks like an O. I think it's an A. All right, so we're going to do const, and here we're going to say compose in answers, if I can spell this word. And then we're going to say window dot, I'm going to copy and paste this from what I have. Because this is our middleware stuff right here. And I'm sure, I think you guys learned this on Wednesday or Thursday, I'm not sure, but you can copy and paste your middleware over into your Sprint project if you want to, because it's helpful. You'll get a log of everything that's going wrong in your code, and it will tell you more precisely what's going wrong if you have this logger in here. All right, it's throwing us a bunch of errors because it's like, doesn't know what's going on. It's very confused because we haven't set up our provider. So we're going to say wrap app in provider. And then instead of the strict mode, we're just going to say provider. Oop, not print. Provider. Got that. And then we're going to change this to provider. There we go. Oh, it's because I didn't pass my store in here. Yep, that would be helpful. There we go. Logger is not defined. Oh, did I not import logger somewhere? Oh, I did it. Import logger. What is it? Redux logger. There we go. Now logger will be defined. And we have no errors, so that's good. All right. Yeah, if you ever see an error that says like something is not defined, like logger is not defined, like logger is not defined, or func isn't defined, or reducer isn't defined, it's probably because you're not importing it. So just pay attention to your imports. Okay, so that was step 2. Let's go back to our app and let's see what step 3 is. So connect components. We only have one component, but we're still going to connect it. So let's do that right now. Let's start with importing React from React. Got to do that in all our components. And then we're also going to import, if I can find my curly braces, connect from, and that's from React Redux. So this is where we put the pieces together. All right, and then we're going to start building out our component here. So we're going to say const, and remember what I said earlier. Make sure your component name is the same as your file name. You want to make sure they match. It's good practice, just good for syntax. It's easy to understand if you do that. Okay, so build out your character list and then just set it equal to empty parentheses right now. We're going to eventually pass in some props because we're going to be getting stuff from our actions. But for now, we're just going to leave it empty because we're just setting everything up right now. And then we are going to do an export default. I always spell default wrong. Okay, default connect. So this is where we're going to do that connect. And then I'm actually just going to, for now, I'm just going to do connect and then I'm going to export my character list as well. You shouldn't get any errors with that. Because eventually we're going to have a whole bunch of stuff in this connect, and we're going to have a map state to props, but right now we don't have any props, and we don't need any of that stuff in there right now at the moment. All right, so let's go back to our app. Let's see what our next step is. Oh, I forgot. Why don't we put right here? We'll put step, what even step are we on? 1, 2, 3, 3. Step 3. Connect components. Oh yeah. Okay, now that we did that, now we're gonna add events and event handlers in the UI. So what this means is we're gonna go into we're just gonna start building everything out. So we're gonna start doing stuff in our reducers. We're gonna start doing stuff in our actions. We're gonna really start building out like all these events that we want to happen. And then eventually we're gonna build out event handlers for these events as well. All right, so let's start out with our actions. Here's where it gets a little like heavy. Like this is where it starts getting a little confusing. So I'm gonna slow down a little bit for you guys. I don't wanna go too fast and confuse you. So in our actions, what we wanna do is we wanna make a GET request to our endpoint for our API, which I have the documentation here, and I'm gonna link this in the description as well. If you wanna look at all the documentation, you can browse through and see all this stuff and maybe build your own app. But for now, we're just getting all the characters. So we're gonna be using this endpoint right here. And I just copy and paste. When you highlight it, it's like, ooh, turns fancy orange. But that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get all of our characters, and then we're gonna create an action, and then in here we're gonna create our cases, like the names that we want our cases to have, and we're gonna say what we want these cases to do, how we want everything to connect. I don't know, it's kind of confusing right now, but I feel like I keep on saying it's confusing, but just watch. But that's kind of the moral of the story here. All right, so since we're making a GET request, we need to import Axios, because that's what we use when we are getting an API. All right, so there's Axios from Axios. And then we're going to start building out our actions. So we're going to say export const. And here's where this is like our event. We're going to say get characters. Set that up. Oh, and we have to do dispatch. So we're going to dispatch that. And then we're going to open this up. Okay. So in here, we're going to use dispatch. And we're going to tell it what type of action. Oh, not like that. We're going to tell it what type of action we want it to use. What we want to name our, or not our action, our case in our reducer. What kind of reducer do you want it? What do we want to name our reducer? Goodness, it took me forever to get that, just finally spit that out. But we're going to name it fetch characters. Oh, not like that. Start. So whenever you guys name your reducer, make sure that it is capital and it has these I think they're called underscores. I believe that's what they're called. Just make sure it's like this. This is something called snake casing. And this is just the syntax that you use for reducers and your cases. That's what we use in Redux. So make sure it's typed like that so that other people, your fellow developers, can understand what you're doing. All right, here's where we're going to make our Axios request. I like to separate everything out. So we're going to say Axios, and then we're going to say get. And here's where we're going to take this right here. Oh, not the whole thing. That would have been crazy. Okay. We're going to get everything from that API. All right, and then we're going to have a then. And then we're going to say response. Oh my goodness. Okay, and in here we're going to say dispatch. And we're going to make a type We're going to have that fetch, oh my goodness. We're going to have this fetch characters success. So here's what we're doing here. We're making this type here, fetch characters start, because we're starting to fetch these characters from the API. And this is just a name. I'm not like using it right now. You can see it's not defined because I'm not using it in my reducers yet. So you don't even have to name these yet. You don't have to do that. You can just keep it empty until you decide what you want to name it in your reducer. But I feel like when you do it this way, it kind of, it helps you plan better. So I would recommend doing it like this, like naming what you want to name it. And typically it's start, success, fail, because it's starting, and then once you get it, it's success. That's why you put it in your then. And then after that, you have a catch, which is your error. And then that's where you have fetch characters fail, which you'll see. I'm going to type that out. So payload, and then here we're going to have response.data. And normally it would just be response.data. But if you look at your documentation, your lovely documentation, you can see, and I know this because I've worked with this API a lot recently, but it's very important to look at your documentation, because if you just do response.data, you're going to get back all of this, like this whole thing. And there's this section right here that is info, and it has like count, pages next. I don't want any of that stuff. So I have to point it directly where I want it to go. So when I map through all of my characters, I don't want this info in here. It's going to give me an error, and it's going to throw my map off, and it's going to ruin things. So really look at your documentation and make sure that you're drilling down to wherever you directly need to go. So in this case, I need to go down to my results, because that's where I get my characters. You can see name, data, species, like all these things here. But you can see this is the character data that I want. So you're going to want to do response.data.results. Results or result? Results. Yeah, make sure it's exactly what it's named in this API. Otherwise, it'll mess everything up. All right. So after our lovely then, we're going to have a lovely catch. Oh, if I can type things right. That's not right. Hold on. Let me fix some things. I screwed some things up. What am I doing wrong? Maybe it was just that. Yeah, it's just that stinking semicolon. Oh, maybe not. Oh, there we go. It fixed itself. Red lines are scary. Red lines always scare me. Okay. Let's have this dispatch. And then in here, we kind of are getting the flow, I think. You can see our type is going to be whatever the heck we want to name it, but I'm going to do fetch characters. Characters, it's not here, so we can't just click enter. Characters, fail. Because this is the error, obviously. Your catch is always your error. So if it can't fetch all the characters from the API, this is what I want to show up. This is the case that I want it to take on. So I'm just going to name it fetch characters fail. And I'm going to set the payload to error.response. All right, so now we have all of these lovely, this lovely Axier's call and all these types that we're going to implement in our reducers. But in order to use them in our reducers, we have to export them. So let's do that. Export const, and then if you want, you can just copy and paste these. That's what I do. That way I don't spell anything wrong. And then we're going to say equals, bada bing, bada boom. And then same thing, export const. We have to do it for each one. Make sure you do it for every single one. And look, you can just start typing and it will come up. Let's see if it does that with this. It doesn't. So let me just, I don't think that worked the way I wanted it to. There we go. Probably shouldn't copy and paste it, although I should probably type it out, but just because I guess copying and pasting avoids spelling errors though, so it's probably a good thing anyway. Okay, there we go. We got it all back. We got fetch character start, fetch character success, and fetch characters fail. So now we exported them, but in order to keep it clean, this is what I was saying to you guys earlier about the index. We are going to import them all into this, or not import them, we're going to export them out from our characters, and this will make them available for our reducers without having to drill down into this character action component. So we'll do it like this, export, and then we're going to export all of those, the fetch characters start, fetch, characters success, and then fetch characters. I feel like I'm definitely spelling these wrong. Characters, we're good so far. Fail. And then also, don't forget, we need to export this get characters event, because that's what we're going to map. That's what we're going to use in our character list component. Took me a while, but I got it. Don't worry. Get characters. That is what it's called, right? Get characters. Yep. And then we are going to say from character actions. Here we go. Now they're accessible to our reducers. Okay, so now that we set up our actions, now we need to write the reducer logic for these actions. So that's one of the steps in our app.js. As you see, we created our events, which is this right here, get characters. And we don't have any like event handlers besides, I mean, we will once we get into our component. You'll see when we get there. But we only have this one get characters event happening. So it's like we don't have a whole lot that we need to create. So that was really it for that step. Besides when we go in here and make some more event handlers. So now we can just move on and we can say build action creators, which we already did actually. So here, hold on. I'm gonna put that at the top here so that it's easy to read. Step, I don't even know what step that is. So you can stop talking about it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we're on the 5th step, step 5. And then that's build action creators. Yay, we're done step 5. Okay, so now let's build out this logic for the reducers, or for the actions. Build out the logic for the actions in the reducer. And that goes here, that's step 6. All right, peeps, let's get started with this reducer logic. Okay. So in here, in our reducer, let's go ahead and start building everything out. So let's make our switch. Let's do action dot type. And make our case. So these are what is, oh, okay. I'm glad that I realized this before I got too far. It would have thrown me an error. But we need to import our actions so that we can give them this reducer logic that we want to. So I'm going to copy and paste them from our, not here, from here. So you can just go right into character reducer and import them in there. And then you can just say from .actions. So nice, instead of just doing actions, instead of drilling down one more. Alrighty. And then in here, now that we imported them, we can say fetch, in state case, fetch character start. Okay, put a colon there, and then we're going to start building out our logic for fetch character start. So we can say return, and we're going to spread in our state. And we're going to say fetching characters. So let me finish typing that. We're going to let that equal to true. I'm not sure why it's I think it's just giving me weird red errors right now because I haven't finished. Oh, I know why. It's because I need to say default turn state. What did it say? Unexpected token? Default? Do I have it in the wrong place? I don't have it in the wrong place. Ah. Yeah, that needs to go there. Maybe not. This. Oh, you know what? I'm dumb. This needs to go here. Oh my, okay. Make sure you include this default return state. This is like the third time in a row I've done this. Because if all of this fails, you just return state. It's setting your default. So just make sure you set this, otherwise you'll get weird red squigglies and errors that just like I got. All right, now let me finally explain what fetch character start is doing. So we're spreading in our state, which is all of this right here, because we said state is equal to initial state. So when we spread in state, we're spreading in our initial state, which is all of this right here. So we're getting our characters, our fetching characters, and our error. And that means, since we're spreading in state, we have access to this fetching characters that we have. And we're just setting that to true. Because if you remember back in our actions, when we did fetching characters start, that's when we made our Axios call to all of our characters. So you want it to be fetching the characters. You want to set that to true in your reducer, because that's exactly what you want it to do. You want it to grab all those characters from your API at the start. All right, so then once you set up that logic, talking too much. All right, now we're gonna have another case for, oh, I always do that, for our fetch character success. So This is after it fetches all of our characters. It was successful. It was great. Awesome. We're getting all of our Rick and Morty characters. Then what do we want to do? Well, we want to spread in the state so that we have access to all of these things that are inside of here. And then we want to get our characters. We want to assign that to action.payload. I don't know why it's typing all weird. Okay. And then we're going to set our fetching characters back to false because it already happened. It was successful. So we don't want it to fetch characters anymore. It's done. Otherwise, it'll just keep on going, and we don't want it to do that. And then we're going to set our error to an empty string for now. Alrighty. So now that we have a case for fetch character success, we're moving right along. We got fetch character start, fetch character success. Now we have one more little guy that we need a case for, and that's fetch character fail. Womp womp. We don't want this to happen, but if it does, we want to return. Hold on, I gotta scroll down for you guys. We gotta spread in our state 3 dots instead of 2. That way we have access to all the things, fetching characters, and we're going to set that to false again because obviously if it was failed, it didn't happen. And then we're going to set this error to action.payload. So all we changed here is if it's a fail, if our characters, we can't fetch them for some reason, we're just changing our error to this action.payload. And then that's it. We have action logic or reducer logic. I keep on switching the words. Reducer logic for our actions. Every single one. We have one for fetch character start, fetch character success, and fetch characters fail. Goodness, that's a tongue twister. Say that 5 times fast. All right. So now that we have all this set up, we have one more step that wasn't really laid out for us in the app, but we can add it. Yeah, set up character list component. Exclamation mark because it's our last step. Okay. So in our character list component, we need to map through this array of characters that we're getting, right? Because we have this array of characters that we set to be all the characters that are coming back from this API, but we're not mapping through them anywhere. So we're not displaying anything to our screen right now. Well, and I didn't call the component an app, but trust me, if I called the component an app, nothing would show up. So in order to map through all of these characters that are coming from our state, we need, first, I'm going to import our get characters event that we have, or action. There we go. So in our actions, we named this right here, we need to get characters. So this is the event that we want to happen when we're trying to fetch all of our characters from the API. So we're going to have to import that in our character list because we're going to have to call it in here as props. And we're eventually going to have to make this so that when we click on it, it fetches all of our characters. I'm going to do something a little different with this. I'm going to make this event right here, or this action, I'm going to make it a on click with an image, with an icon. That way when we click on the icon, it does everything that we told it to do in our actions. We're going to fetch all of our characters. And then obviously if it can't happen, then we're going to throw our failure. But I hope it does happen. I think it will. So first, in order to have props, we have to do something important here. We need to make a map state to props. And then this is going to be all of our state that we are going to conform into our props. So we're going to say return, and then we're going to lay out all the things that are in our state. So if you go back to our initial state here in our reducer, see we have characters, fetching characters, and we have an error. So we're going to lay all that out in here. We're going to say characters, and we're going to say state dot characters. And then we're also going to say fetching characters. We're going to set that to state dot fetching characters. And then we're going to have error. And guess what we're going to set that to? State dot error. All right. I'm going to put some little semicolons here because I think they look pretty. And then here we're going to say map state to props. That way we can connect our state and make it our props. And we can do all the beautiful things that we're going to be doing in our component with those props, like mapping through the character array and using the get characters to fetch all of our characters. And yeah, we'll see it come into play, but just know we got to pass map state to props in here. And then we also have to pass, you can see right here, it's like red squiggly lines, it's undefined. I'm not sure what the error is here. Is declare, but its value is never read. So you would think, well, later on when we start doing this, we're going to have an on click and we're going to use this get characters. But even when we make that on click, it's still not going to be read. So we need to pass it in here to our connect so that we can connect our action into here and we can make it our props. So we have to do get characters. And then you see it like immediately lit up. And that's because we're getting it from our actions and we're going to be able to use it as props in here in our character list component and make an on click and be able to fetch all of our characters from the API. So that's what we're going to do next. Here's the exciting part. You guys are really going to see it come to life here. So we're going to return. And in our return, this is JSX. So if you guys remember from last week, I basically did the same thing except just not with Redux. So I got all the characters from the API, and then I pulled out pieces that I wanted from each character. So if you go back to the documentation, you can see that inside of this results array, they have objects full of key value pairs. And inside of here, they have like a key that is ID with the value of 1, a key that is name with the value of Rick Sanchez. You know, they have all of these key value pairs in here, and that's what we're going to pull out. We're going to pull out these key value pairs, and when we map through, we're going to display whatever we pull out onto the screen. That way, you're not just like pulling everything out. We want to pick out exactly what we want to display on our screen. Oh, okay. So we're gonna have a div. And then in there, we're gonna make a p tag. Oh, okay. And then in this p tag, well, I'm actually gonna make a little like heading that says click on Rick to get all the characters. Actually, I'm going to say Rick and Morty characters. Be a little more specific. Characters. Yay! And then I'm going to put a little emoji. I love emojis. Some people don't like them in the code, and it always throws this error that it needs to be surrounded in a span so that it's accessible. You can look into how to do that if you want. It's fairly simple. You just surround this in a span and like give it a name. I don't know. It's just so that people who have like screen readers know that this is an emoji. It's very helpful, and if I was putting this out somewhere that wasn't just to you guys, I would probably do that, but we're just gonna not do that for now. But definitely look into it. It's helpful if you want to do emojis in your code. All right, and then here we're going to have an image tag. And this is where I'm going to make that on click. I'm going to make this be an icon, and then when we click on it, it's going to get all of our characters in our API. It's going to be like magic. All right, so in order to get this icon, I just went to Google and I typed like Rick and Morty icons that are transparent. If you don't want the icon that I am having, you can just look that up yourself, but this is just an icon of Rick's head, so that's the one I'm going to stick with. And then here we're going to have an alt tag, and we're just going to say, because every image needs an alt tag so that it's accessible, I'm going to say Rick and Morty icon. Oh, not outside. Still inside. We're going to create our on click. So this is the really important part. Like, this will make our image, but this is what's going to get all of our characters from the API. So we're going to set this on click equal to these curly braces because it's JSX. So we're going to say an anonymous function, and then we're going to make that props because we're mapping state to props. So we're making these, we made this get characters action, we did our props. So we have to say props dot get characters, and that's going to get that action. And if you remember, this action gets all of our characters from our API. So when we click on this icon, it's going to get all of our characters from our API. I've said that like 1,000 times, but it's just really cool, so that's why I keep on saying it. Okay, and then once we have that, I'm going to save it so that it's not hideous. So right now we have this on click. It gets all of our characters, but we're not mapping through our characters anywhere. So that's what we have to do next, because right now it's going to throw you an error. It's just going to be like, wait, I don't know what to do with all this information. Like, you're just throwing this whole entire API at me. What do you want me to do? So right here, we have to say that we want to map through this character array. So you're going to say props.characters, and if you remember, we created these maps, state to props, and we pulled out the pieces of our state, all of them. I was going to say that we wanted, but it's all of them. And this is our characters. So if we go back to our reducer, you can see in our initial state, or our state, because that's what we assigned it to, state equals initial state. So then when we say map state to props, and in here we, oh, not there. In here we say equals state, that's where we're getting this whole, like, that's how we are having access to it. So we're saying props.characters.map because in our state we have this character array, and this is the array that is going to be all of our characters. You know, we're pushing all of these characters from our actions, from this API call, we're pushing them all into our character array that we set in our state here in our reducer. So then when you go back in here to your component, you say props.characters.map. It's going to be able to map through all those characters in your API. So then this is just a parameter, just a banana word. You can name it whatever you want. You can name it item, you can name it X. I don't care. You can name it banana. But I like to name it whatever is, like, whatever we're actually getting from our API. So in this case, we have a list of characters. So I'm just going to name it character. That way when we go to pull out these pieces, we can say character.name instead of saying item.name, because even though it's just a banana word, character is the best descriptive word that we can pick that describes what we're pulling out from our API. All right, so open that up. And then in here, we need a div, which is why it's like throwing you a whole bunch of red lines because you don't have a div. It's throwing a fit. So now you have a div. And then here is where it gets very, very similar to last week. You are pulling out the pieces of information that you want. So for example, in this div tag, we're going to say key equals character. And just like I said, that's our banana word coming in there. If I made that item, this would have to be item, but I like it character. And this is going to avoid, oh, not that. If we say character.id, that's going to avoid that error that you guys sometimes get. Like it won't affect, like if you don't have this, it won't hurt the functionality of your web page. You'll still be able to get all of your characters, but it will throw you with this little annoying error that says like each, I always forget what it says, but it's just basically like each object in the array doesn't have a specific ID. Actually, I think that's exactly what it says, but it wants this. It wants this specific ID for each object in the array. So if you look at your documentation, you can see each person has an ID. So if you just say character.id and you set that equal to this key, then that error will go away. So that's just an easy fix to that error. And then let's make an H1. You can make these whatever. Like you can make this P tag. You can make it an H2. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to make it an H2 because I don't think it's as important as our actual heading right here. So then in here, I'm going to say name, and I'm going to make this character.name. So make sure that you're looking, because this could have been named something else. This could have been named, I don't know, character name. It could have been named something else. I don't know. But just make sure that you're looking at the data that's coming back from your API, because say that this wasn't named. Say that it was character underscore name. Then you would have to say character dot character underscore name. But since it's name in your API data, you can just make it character dot name. All right, and then let's do an image tag. And let's do source and, oh, not that. I'm so used to doing that. So this is where we're pulling out the character image for each character. So if you look, make sure that it doesn't have like a slash API, because that just goes to another API. So you may look at this and just look at, oh, this is a URL. That's probably the picture of the character, right? But then you got to look closer. You got to look and see what's actually in there. You got to look at this value because it goes to another API and we don't want that. So look and see, find the one that's like a JPEG or, yep, right here. So this one's an image and you can look, it says JPEG. So you know that that is an image and not just another API. So you go in here and you have to say character dot image. And then it's throwing you an error because it needs an alt tag. And you can just say quick and morning character. All right, and then let's look in here. Let's see what other fun things we can pull out. Ooh, we can pull out where they live. I think I did that last week too, but let's do it again. I think it's cool because you kind of have to drill down into it. So make these a p tag, and then instead of here, we will say, what is it called? Location. Yeah, we're gonna make it home sweet home. So in here you can say character, and you gotta look, this is where you gotta be careful. So you can see that name is inside a whole other object here. Like it's inside a whole nother named object. So you have to say character dot location, and then once you're inside this location object, you can say dot name. So you have to say character dot location dot name, and then it will go down into that object, into the name of the location. And then we're going to make another p tag just for fun. And we're going to say, I don't know, what you guys want to get. Let's do status, whether they're alive or dead. Let's see, dead or alive. So it's either, all right, character dot status. And that's enough. We'll stick to that. I mean, you guys can have some more fun with this if you want and pull out all the data for all I care, but we're just going to stick to this. And make sure that your data is in, like you're pulling out the pieces of data in the order that you want them to display. So in this case, it'll be my name, my image, their location, and then their status. It'll be like bump, 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 bump. But if you want all of this information before you have their image, just put this on top, and then it will display that way. Okay, so this looks good. I think we're done. We exported it. And so all that's left is to go into our app.js and import it. I like to have a separate spot for my components. I like to import my components. We only have one, but if you have like 2 or 3, it's kind of nice to have all your imports separated. So let's import, what did I name it? Character list from components dash character list. And it's all red squiggly. So in order to fix that, you can just say character list. Boom! All right, let's open this up big. I'm gonna move myself. Okay. You can click this little icon here in the corner if you want to open it up in a new window. I like to do that when I'm doing something like this, because this really helps you see everything that's going on, and then you can inspect if you want. You can even check out, see what's happening. Nothing's happening because I didn't console log anything, but if you put console logs in your code, then you can open it up and see it in a bigger screen with Code Sandbox. Okay, so just like I said, in our code, we have an on click right here. Excuse me. We have this on click on this icon here. You can see I put it on the same image tag with this icon. And this is going to get our characters. This is what makes our action happen. So let's watch it. Let's watch the magic happen. Boom! There's all our characters. And then you'll see if I reload, they're gone. So you have to click it again and then you'll get your characters. But yeah, awesome. And everything's displaying like we want it to. It's the name, their location, if they're dead or alive. And yeah, we don't know if this guy's dead or alive. But yeah, I don't watch Rick and Morty, so I don't know what's going on, but I just know some of these images are really funny. But that's it. That's everything. Like I said, in your sprint on Friday, you're going to have to do a little bit more. You're going to have to add a Smurf, not a character, but you're going to have to add a Smurf to the API. So you will have to add another action. You'll have to add more logic in your reducer for your action. You're probably going to want another component so that you can have a form for adding your Smurf. But I can't add any characters to this API because somebody else set it up, somebody else built it. They don't want random people going in and just adding random things. But this is a good half of what you guys will need to know and how to implement it. So I hope that this is helpful, and I hope that you enjoyed it. But like I said, I'm going to have the starter code in the description, and I'm going to put the documentation for this Rick and Morty API. I'm going to put that all in the description below the video. So if you guys want to follow along or just take a look at the documentation or take a look at the documentation while you're following along, it'll all be there. But yeah, have a good day, morning, evening, whatever time it is. Have a good one, and thanks for watching.